You know, we often overlook the small things. But sometimes, well, the most ordinary objects have these really extraordinary stories just hiding underneath.
Oh, no.
Today, we're diving deep into something you've almost certainly handled, maybe even today. The U.S. penny.
Ah, the penny.
Yeah, and in our little world here, for this deep dive, let's imagine a presidential order just came down to halt the minting of this coin. You know, the one that feels like it's always been there.
It's so easy to just dismiss the penny, isn't it? It can feel, I don't know, like more of a nuisance sometimes, weighing down your pockets, maybe slowing things down at the checkout.
Right.
But this idea, this potential end of an era, it really makes you stop and think, what are the actual consequences when something so ingrained in our daily lives just disappears?
And what can we learn? I mean, other countries have already done this, right? Said goodbye to their lowest coin.
Exactly. There are definitely lessons there.
So, to really get into this, we've gathered some fascinating stuff. We've got this fictional recent news report about the order. Then there's a really insightful YouTube exploration looking at how other countries deal with their small change.
Right, the global picture.
And also a really detailed history of the U.S. cent itself. So our goal today really is to unpack the why behind this potential shift, explore the wider implications.
And uncover some genuinely surprising facts, I bet, about this humble little coin.
Definitely. Should be interesting.
Okay, so let's start with that bigger picture. The YouTube video by Jim and Dawn Cutler, it does a great job showing that the U.S. isn't, like, in a vacuum here.
Yeah.
Loads of other nations have already decided their version of the penny, well, has run its course.
Absolutely. The video points out Canada, they stopped minting their penny way back in 2012.
12 years ago, yeah.
And the Bahamas apparently just recently ditched their smallest coin. Even Mexico, get this, hasn't produced its centavo coin for nearly 50 years.
Wow, 50 years.
It really makes you realize this isn't just some quirky American debate, you know?
Not at all. And the video lists quite a few more. Australia, they retired their 1-cent coin back in '92, the one with the Queen and the feather-tailed glider.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they even melted them down to make medals for the Sydney Olympics.
No way. Okay, that's cool.
New Zealand's penny, the one with the tui bird, that's gone too. Ireland's smallest coin had a bird from the Book of Kells and a harp, gone. Israel's one Agora coin, the one with the galley boat, ended in 1991.
It's quite a list. It keeps going, right?
Oh, yeah. Sweden stopped in '72. Denmark, too. South Africa, they had various designs on their lowest coin, ended up with Cape Sparrows, I think, gone. Brazil ended theirs in 2006. Trinidad had a hummingbird on theirs. Even Japan, their 1 yen coin, the Showa design with bamboo. Apparently, it just wasn't worth making after 2016. Finland's penny stopped way back in 1979. And Switzerland's Rappen 1, which had this incredibly long history, like back to the 1200s. They stopped in 2007.
Okay, so the takeaway is pretty clear then. This is a global trend. It's not just about the U.S. being, I don't know, annoyed by pennies. It's practical.
Exactly. It seems to be a recognition that when the cost to actually make the coin is more than what it's worth.
And it slows things down.
Right, and it actually hinders transactions. Maybe its time has just come. It's economics, really.
This global perspective really reframes it, doesn't it? It suggests, practical stuff can outweigh tradition. So, okay, let's zoom back in on the U.S. penny itself. Why is this conversation happening now?
Right. Well, there's a quote in that Cutler video from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette that kind of sums it up. Something like, "The penny has had a good run, but it's time to bid it farewell."
Yeah, that feels about right. I mean, honestly, for most of us, a penny today feels, well, pretty much worthless compared to what it could buy, even just a few decades ago.
Definitely. And the Cutlers also touch on why it stuck around, that whole psychological pricing thing, the 0.99 effect.
Oh, yeah, the 99 cents trap.
That's a big one. It makes things feel cheaper, right? Even though you just end up with more pennies rattling around.
True. And then there's sales tax, which, well, for now, kind of requires pennies for exact change in a lot of places.
But you have to wonder, if the penny is such a hassle, like you said, doesn't that annoyance factor kind of cancel out the psychological benefit at the checkout?
That's a really good point. And speaking of hassle, the amount of wasted pennies is just...
Wow.
Americans apparently throw away something like $62 million in coins every year.
62 million.
Yeah, and the video mentioned at least 45% of the public actively wants to ditch the penny. I mean, I know I've got a jar somewhere, probably full.
Haven't we all? And the economics of just making the penny are pretty eye-opening. It cost the U.S. Mint more to produce a penny than its actual face value.
That's the crazy part.
The color video says it cost nearly $1 to make just 50 pennies. And last year, the Mint reportedly lost, $72 million, making 7 billion pennies?
$72 million lost on something most people don't even want. That's significant.
It really is. A huge drain for something many see as having, almost no value.
And let's not forget the huge shift to electronic payments. That color video points this out too. Cards, apps, especially since the pandemic, right? It just made physical coins feel way less essential.
Absolutely. Combine that with inflation just constantly eating away at the penny's buying power.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds an awful lot like why the U.S. got rid of the half cent way back in 1857, because it had become, practically useless.
As they put it in the video, sound familiar?
It really does. The economic arguments seem pretty strong.
Okay, so the economics make sense. But to really get the impact of losing the penny, we should probably look at its history, right? That Treasure Town video you mentioned, that sounds fascinating.
Oh, it's a great resource. It takes you on this journey through the whole evolution of the U.S. cent.
So where does it start?
Right at the beginning. The very first U.S. cent, the 1793 flowing hair chain cent. First coin mass-produced by the U.S. government.
Okay, flowing hair, chain
Right.
symbolism.
Yeah, the flowing hair was meant to symbolize freedom, liberty,
Yeah.
and the chain on the back, that was supposed to represent the strength of the linked states.
Nice idea.
But get this, people apparently hated it.
Hated it. Why?
They thought the hair looked wild, like savagery or madness was the criticism. And the chain. Some people associated it with slavery.
Wow. Talk about a controversial debut for your first national coin.
Right. It really shows how even tiny details on money can carry huge weight. And that first cent also had 1100 on it.
Ah, committing to the decimal system.
Exactly, a deliberate step. And the irony is, these early cents, which people complained about, we think of as almost worthless now, some of them, in top condition, can be incredibly valuable today, like millions.
Millions for a penny. Wild. So they changed the design pretty fast then.
Oh, yeah. They quickly moved to the 1793 flowing hair wreath cent, a bit more refined looking, then the 1793 Liberty Cap cent, another symbol of freedom. The weight even changed early on.
So lots of adjustments.
Totally. The Treasure Town host calls the variety of these early cents just remarkable. He mentions the 1796 to 1807 draped bust cent, different reverse designs, even errors on the coin. That whole period really shows them figuring things out, the challenges of setting up a currency.
Makes sense. So it wasn't smooth sailing.
Not at all. We see design changes, tweaks to the metal content, the beginnings of coin collecting, actually. The video walks through later designs, too, like the classic head cent from 1808, then the coronet head cent up to 1839. That's when the value for regular circulated ones started to drop off a bit.
Okay, and then?
Then you get the braided hair cent from 1839 to 1857. The differences get really subtle then, more for serious collectors. But the big change came because copper was getting too expensive.
Ah, the cost factor again.
Exactly, which led to the smaller cent, the 1856 to 1858 Flying Eagle cent, much lighter. But interestingly, this new, smaller coin wasn't actually considered legal tender at first.
Ah, so that move to a smaller cent was a really big deal.
Huge turning point. And the video explains how the next design, the Indian head cent, became the standard for a long time, 1859, all the way to 1909.
The Indian head penny, yeah, everyone knows that one.
Iconic now, right. But apparently even that wasn't universally loved when it first came out. Some people didn't like the smaller size compared to the old large cents.
People always find something to complain about, huh?
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 1909 brings the Lincoln head cent for Lincoln's 100th birthday.
The one we basically still have today, design-wise on the front.
Pretty much. And it was a big deal the first time a real person, not an allegorical figure like Liberty, appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. Apparently Teddy Roosevelt pushed for it.
Okay. But wasn't there some controversy there, too?
Oh, yeah. Not just about using a real person, but the sculptor's initials, VDB Victor David Brenner. They were on the reverse, at the bottom.
VDB, right. I think I've heard about this.
Well, there was a public outcry. Some thought it was too prominent, like advertising. So they actually removed the initials really quickly. Only later were they added back, much smaller, on Lincoln's shoulder.
Wow. All that fuss over tiny initials.
Exactly. And the Treasure Town video keeps going. It covers the 1943 steel cent, during World War II to save copper.
Railroads, yeah.
Then the return to copper, then the Lincoln Memorial design on the back, starting in 1959, the 4 different reverse designs in 2009, for Lincoln's bicentennial.
Right, showing different parts of his life.
Yeah, and finally, the current Lincoln Union Shield cent we've had since 2010. It's a remarkable journey, seeing how this little coin has reflected these big moments in American history.
It really, really has. Okay, so that brings us pretty much up to today. Now, that KARE 11 news report you mentioned, the one about the fictional order, what does it say might actually happen if the penny is discontinued?
Well, it suggests there probably wouldn't be huge opposition, mainly because, as they point out, pennies aren't even worth the metal they're made of anymore. The incentive to hoard them is gone.
Right, and cost savings.
The report brings that up, yeah. It echoes a 2022 Federal Reserve study that estimated savings of up to $100 million a year just by stopping production.
$100 million. That's not insignificant.
No, but it also raises a potential complication. We might need more nickels. And nickels also cost more to make than their face value.
Oh. So you save money on pennies, but spend more on nickels. Could that offset the savings?
It could, yeah. It's a bit of a balancing act.
And what about prices? The rounding thing.
Right. Canada's experience is mentioned. After they ditched their penny, cash transactions had to be rounded to the nearest 5 cents. And apparently prices tended to round up slightly more often than down.
Ah, so maybe a tiny bit of inflation there.
Maybe, yeah. Though one expert in the report called the overall monetary impact minimal, terming it rational inattention-like. People don't really notice or care about those tiny differences. But it shows even small changes can have effects, maybe more psychological than purely economic.
Interesting. Psychological.
The report also touches on that the idea of the penny being a tangible sign of inflation. Maybe that's why governments sometimes hesitate to get rid of it, even if it makes economic sense. It's like admitting defeat against rising prices, perhaps.
That's a subtle point. And, okay, practically speaking, what happens to the billions and billions of pennies already out there in our jars and under couch cushions?
Good question. Canada apparently offered a recycling program for a while. But the report notes that in the U.S., getting rid of them or demonetizing them would likely need an actual act of Congress, not just stopping production.
So they'd still be legal tender, just not made anymore?
Probably, at least initially. They did mention those penny press machines, at tourist spots, turning old pennies into souvenirs. That's one way to recycle them, I guess.
Huh. Give them a new life as a flattened memory. I like it.
It's something. Now, let's circle back to some of those really surprising little facts from the Jim and Don Cutler video. These are the things that show the penny has this, hidden depth.
Okay, yeah. Hit me with some fun facts.
All right. Those tiny mint marks. P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, S for San Francisco, sometimes even a W for West Point. They tell you exactly where that specific penny was made. Little bits of history.
Cool. What else?
Remember the fuss about the VDB initials on the 1909 Lincoln cent?
Yeah, the ones they took off quickly.
Well, because they were removed so quickly, those original 1909 VDB pennies are now quite valuable to collectors.
Ah, scarcity. Makes sense.
But here's the really amazing connection they mention. The NASA Curiosity rover on Mars.
Yeah, what about it?
It's carrying a 1909 Lincoln head cent with the VDB initials.
Get out! Seriously, on Mars.
Seriously. So even if the U.S. stops using pennies down here, there's one literally on another planet. Talk about an enduring legacy.
That's actually incredible. Wow. Okay, any other quirky ones?
Oh, yeah. They mentioned pennies being used in those souvenir crushing machines, obviously, but also things like propping up wobbly furniture, maybe keeping cut flowers fresh longer. Firestone apparently even suggested using a penny to check your tire tread depth of Lincoln's head as a measuring tool.
Practical uses.
Then there's pop culture, penny marshal, penny lane. And apparently if you spin a penny, it's more likely to land tails up because the Lincoln side is slightly heavier.
I might have to test that later.
Right. They even brought up that old chessboard problem, doubling a penny on each square to show how even tiny amounts can grow exponentially. Kind of a contrast to how worthless we think the penny is today.
Yeah, that's a good illustration.
And a bit of etymology, an early Dutch coin called a duit was commonly called a penny back in colonial New York. So the name itself has history.
Huh. I never knew that.
And one last historical tidbit they shared. The very first coin officially made by the U.S. was actually the Fugio cent, designed by Benjamin Franklin before the 1793 penny.
Ben Franklin designed a coin.
Yep. And it had these cryptic messages. Mind your business on one side.
Seriously, mind your business.
Yeah. And we are one around a sundial with Fugio, meaning I fly, relating to time flying. It's pretty unique. But the contract to make them got caught up in corruption. So even the very, very beginning of U.S. coinage had its share of drama.
Wow.
Plus, as we heard with the flowing hair scent, the public had strong reactions right from the start. The insane hair, the chain they disliked. People have apparently always had opinions about their pennies.
It seems so. Okay, so wrapping this all up. We've seen this clear global trend moving away from these tiny coins.
Yep.
The U.S. penny itself costs more to make than it's worth. It's becoming less practical in our digital world.
And yet it has this incredibly rich, sometimes controversial, surprisingly fascinating history behind it.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's a final thought to leave you with. If this small piece of metal, right, often dismissed, seen as insignificant, maybe even annoying, if it holds so much history, so much economic weight, and even a symbolic place on Mars, what other seemingly minor parts of our daily lives might deserve a much closer look?
That's a great question.
What hidden stories, what unexpected significance might we be just walking past or tossing in a jar, completely overlooking all around us?
Makes you think, doesn't it? We really encourage you, think about your own relationship with the penny. What would its absence really mean to you, beyond maybe needing fewer coin jars?
Yeah. It's a small potential change, maybe, but one with surprisingly deep roots and potentially some really far-reaching implications to consider.